Hello, and welcome to the latest installment in the Law & Order video series. In this video, we'll be looking at the puzzle adventure horror game, Bendy and the Ink Machine from Joey Drew Studios. I absolutely love this game, everything from the level design and aesthetic, down to the voice acting and the story. It had everything you could want from a game. There will be spoilers in this video, so if you haven't played the game and you want to, I'm not sure why you'd be watching this video, but you now have been warned. A man called Henry enters a cartoon animation studio called Joey Drew Studios, which he used to be an artist, and he was the co-founder of it. He's been invited there by his partner, Joey Drew, who states that he has something that he needs to show him. Henry explores a derelict studio littered with cardboard cutouts of a character called Bendy, and then Henry discovers a hidden ink machine. But after turning it on, it produces a malicious version of Bendy, known as Ink Bendy, which chases Henry. Just before he makes it to the exit, he falls through the floor. After clearing a path for himself, he stands in the middle of a ritualistic symbol on the floor, sees some visions, and passes out. Henry awakens from his involuntary slumber and makes his way through the lower level of the studio. Henry sees a person carrying a cardboard cutout of the character called Bendy, but when he follows him, it appears that the man has simply just disappeared. After having to solve some puzzles of a musical variety, Henry is confronted and tied up by the man that he saw before, who is called Sammy, and Sammy mentions that someone, or he, will set them free. Henry is then chased by Ink Bendy. He manages to escape, but is spooked by another character from the studio called Boris. After taking a rest inside of Boris' safe house, Henry awakens and he and Boris leave the safe house in the hope of finding a way out of the studio. It's dark, but with the use of a flashlight, they manage to find their way out. Boris journeys through a vent in order to open a door so that Henry can pass through. He ends up in a room with a sign which says Heavenly Toys. Passing through this room, Henry ends up in the toy room for a character called Alice Angel. An advert for Alice Angel plays on the screens, and after it finishes, a twisted, evil version of Alice Angel will start shouting from behind the glass. Henry has a choice of taking one of two paths, the angel or the demon. After a spooky encounter with a Bendy cutout, Henry reunites with Boris, who gives Henry a pipe in order to defend himself, and they find an elevator. After hearing the twisted Alice speaking to them over the speakers, the two of them ride the elevator to level 9 as instructed to do so by Alice. They see a lot of Boris clones dead, having been killed by Alice. Alice gives Henry various tasks that he must complete for her in order to escape. However, after completing these tasks, Alice betrays Henry, accuses him of stealing from her, and causes the elevator to plummet to the depths, and after it crashes, she kidnaps Boris. Henry awakens after the elevator crash and finds Boris gone and sets out in order to save him. After making his way through the studio archives and witnessing a pretty cool fight between Ink Bendy and a character called the Projectionist, Henry journeys through a haunted house. Traveling merrily along in his cart, Henry hears Alice speaking over the speakers and tells Henry she has a surprise for him. This surprise is Boris, now seemingly having been turned into a brute by Alice. Henry eventually defeats brute Boris, and Alice turns up annoyed, and just as she is about to kill Henry, she is stabbed from behind by a lady called Allison and a man called Tom. Henry wakes up again. This time he is in Allison and Tom's hideout. Allison gives Henry a piece of glass which shows hidden messages written on surfaces. Eventually, Allison mentions that Ink Bendy has found their hideout due to Tom doing something incredibly foolish, and Allison and Tom leave Henry for dead. After using the glass to help him escape, Henry makes it to an old barge and he has to sail through the ink-filled tunnels until he reaches safety. Henry isn't safe for long though, as he is attacked by Sammy. Tom comes to the rescue and buries the axe into Sammy's head. After a massive fight with some enemies called Searchers, Henry leads the way but falls down a hole after a wooden board collapses. Henry eventually reaches a film vault and meets up with Allison and Tom again, who explain that just beyond a door, which Tom duly punches open, lies Ink Bendy's lair, located inside a giant version of the ink machine. Upon approaching his lair, Ink Bendy turns into Beast Bendy, and after a battle, Henry manages to defeat him by using a film reel titled At the End. Henry then seemingly arrives in the apartment of Joey Drew, who tells Henry that he needs to visit his old workshop. Henry goes through a door and is right back where he started in Chapter 1 again. Then the game ends. So again, there's a lot to discuss here, but we'll start by discussing my theory on what's going on. This game has a lot going on in terms of lore outside of the game. If you do have a different theory, put it down below. I'd be keen to hear your take on it. Awful Dreams Come to Life came out on the 3rd of September. Started in 1929, the Joey Drew Studio was a success. Well, it was in the first 15 years or so, but we'll get to that. The company was started up by Joey and his friend Henry Stein, a talented artist. Despite Joey taking full credit for the characters that the studio designed in his book The Illusion of Living, Henry was actually the visionary for them, and he was the one who designed them. This is reinforced by that secret message in the lobby which states that Joey drew nothing. All Joey cared about was wealth and success. He likely saw Henry's talent and saw dollar signs. This was refuted by Nathan Arch Sr., owner of Archgate Films, in the reissue of Joey Drew's book The Illusion of Living, released after Joey passed away, where he states in his foreword that certain untruths have come to surface, as well as rumours and backlash as well, hence all of the old Bendy cardboard cutouts around the studio. That same year, Henry's second character Boris, a friend of Bendy's who tried to keep him out of trouble, joined the lineup and he featured as Boris the Wolf in the cartoon The Sheep Songs. These two cartoons brought great success to the company, but Joey naturally wanted more. In 1930, Henry designs Alice Angel, and she makes her first appearance 3 years later in Sent From Above. Alice Angel didn't do as well as the other two, but due to the continued popularity of Bendy, Joey starts up a subsidiary of Joey Drew Studios and creates Heavenly Toys. Around 1930, Henry decides to leave the studio and spend more time with his wife Linda. Henry just wasn't happy working there due to Joey taking and were appalling for that overtime as they were salaried. The studio created the Butcher Gang, and Bendy has a run-in with them in the cartoon titled The Butcher Gang. Joey, being the money-hungry, ambitious person that he is, decides that he wants to cash in on Bendy's popularity by hiring famed theme park designer Bertram Piedmont to design something called Bendyland. He bought some land, and as we can see here, Bertram was spending a lot of money. But in 1944, the company is now in big trouble. They are under investigation by the IRS for non-payment of back taxes, but Joey Drew vehemently denies this, claiming it's just disgruntled ex-employees or their rivals. However, 2 years later on from that, the company starts failing to pay its employees. The solution projects that Joey had commissioned was the design of an ink machine. This ink machine was a breakthrough in artistic technology. In the employee handbook, it states that this machine was designed to pump out high-quality ink throughout the studio and was also to be used to create life-size productions of anything they could think of. The ink from this machine could be collected and placed into a contraption called an ink maker machine in order to make gears, pipes, wrenches, anything really. Now, quite what sort of magic or sorcery is making this happen is unknown. According to this recording, one of Joey Drew's motivations was belief. The belief can make you achieve your dreams, and for him at least, means him becoming rich and powerful. At some point in the 1940s, Joey teamed up with Gent, more specifically one of their engineers, Thomas Connor. Over the months in designing this machine, Thomas, or Tom, would report back to Gent. However, Tom became concerned that Mr. Drew's expectations seemed to be changing regularly. He mentions that what stuff is likely that he's had a creep. These ones just were Norman Polk turning into the Projectionist monster, Alison Pendle becoming good Alice, Tom Connor becoming a counterpart of Boris the Wolf, a clone if you like. There were the various Boris and Butcher Gang clones, but I don't know who they used to be. The ink machine would pump ink throughout the studio via pipes. Tom Drew mentioned that and at the bottom